posting this question in advance. What's been your experience with ranking the GMBs of EMD websites? I have multiple sites that are very generic and are usually named service plus city, which makes creating a branded entity within Google very difficult. Since the major GMB update earlier this year, all of my GMBs tanked, and it's been a challenge to recover them all now, but also ranking new GMBs has been harder than before. So I'm thinking branding is now playing a much bigger part in Google's algorithm. Just keen to hear your thoughts here. Yeah, Chris. Okay, so yes, it can be harder to rank a GMB with with a very generic type name. I've actually got one that I intentionally set one up specifically to test, well, for a couple of reasons. And the project that I set one up for it's city tree service, right? So it's the name of the city and in tree service, which is very generic. And that's the brand for this location. And I did that intentionally for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to try to rank organically. So I used kind of it's almost an exact match domain, not quite. And I wanted to test that anyways, just straight up organic ranking. But then I also added a GMB to it, which I wasn't planning on doing originally. So I know what you mean. It can be difficult to do that, but you can build, the reason why it's hard to do that is because it's kind of an ambiguated, right? It's a common term. Usually when you have a brand name like that, it's because it's hard to establish it as an entity because it's really a generic term, right? So that's why, but you can still establish it as an entity. It just takes it takes more work, really. That's where the SEO Shield would come in. That's a great way to start. That includes, the syndication network, the G site and Drive Stack, an ID page, which is critically important for starting to establish the entity, press advantage organization page, and then, Pearl trees and everything else. But all of that stuff is a good start because you start to build out those tier one entity assets and increase your entity footprint, so to speak. Getting additional profile on additional Web 2.0 and social media accounts, all of that is important. Link building to that stuff to kind of start to power it up, to kind of solidify that. Press releases, that's another great way to do it, is to publish press releases with the brand name in the title often. And you can start to establish some authority that way as well, to kind of disambiguate that brand name from the general keyword search. But in my opinion, you really have to build the entity assets up and interlink them properly and use schema correctly on the money site with same as attributes to kind of link to all of your different profiles and assets online, branded assets for that brand and all of that. Those kind of things are really how you start to disambiguate that as its own entity, as opposed to being just a generic keyword, if that makes sense. So yeah, it can be harder, but it can still be done. And so again, pay attention, Chris, for next weekend, because the project that I used to show how to do the content mirroring process is the project that I'm talking about right now, which is, it's basically like an EMD. It's a very generic, it's city tree service, right? So the name of the city and in tree service, which is a very generic name, but I expect to see quite good results with it because of some of the stuff that I've applied to it, which a lot of that I'm sharing in the training next weekend for Black Friday. Okay. So hold on a minute. Also, yeah, go get the GMB process. If you don't already have it yet, Chris, it's free. It's 100% free. Go to gmbprocess.com, opt in, and then you can get the GMB process checklist. I had a number, like several dozen, over 30 GMBs tank in the middle of June, probably from the same update that you're talking about. And I've recovered more than over 80% of them I've recovered now by applying specifically everything that I've put in the GMB process checklist. So again, I had over 30 GMBs of my own tank in June because of probably the same algorithm update that you're talking about. And I scrambled for months. I tried, which was in all reality, I look at now as a blessing that it happened, because once I had over 30 GMBs tank, I had a whole bunch of them to test with, to test various methods or tactics in isolation. And what I did was across, over a dozen of them, I had started testing various, SEO tactics. And in isolation, meaning I would apply one SEO tactic to one GMB location, and then I would wait and monitor it and see what kind of movement I would get. And I started to identify certain tactics that produced, movement, positive movement. And then I started combining them. And over the course of several months, how I developed the GMB process checklist, because it was all of the things that I did that I found moved the needle positively, right? Had a positive effect. And when combined, even in very, very competitive areas, if you do everything in the GMB process checklist, which isn't necessary for, most locations, but in very competitive areas, it is, you'll have to do everything. But I've been able to recover, like I said, over 80% of my own GMBs, but also apply the same process to brand new GMBs for like clients, or established GMBs, but that just weren't ranking at all for clients. And I've been able to get all of them into the MAPS 3-pack within 90 days following that specific process. So, it is a little bit more of an uphill battle with the generic brand name, so to speak, but you can still do it. There is no question. If you follow everything that I teach or that I share in the GMB process checklist, you will be able to kind of solidify the entity even for a generic term like that, and actually start to get results. So just take it one step at a time. That's why I like that process checklist, guys, because you don't have to do everything. You do it in stages, right? It could take you 90 days to complete everything. So be it. It'll work. You'll get results. I promise you. All right. Says, I'm thinking my best move is to rebrand as many GMBs and sites as I can to give them a more branded profile in Google's eyes. Yeah, you can do that. The problem that I see with that is every time you go in to rebrand a GMB, you're risking losing it. And it makes sense to do that. Part of the process, one of my lead gen assets that got hit really hard was a multi-location lead gen brand in June. That was one of them that got hit real hard. And so I had like 12 different locations associated with that one brand. And I was able to go in and just append the city name to the brand name. So, and I was afraid that I was going to lose GMBs that way, but fortunately I didn't lose a single one. But I would be really cautious about going in and because think about this. I had a unique brand name for those 12 locations, and they all just had the brand name for each individual GMB. There was no location modifier attached to it. But all I did was I went back in and I did it to 10 of them. There's still 2 locations out there that I did not append the city name to, but 10 of them I did. I went in and appended the city name. So it was, generic tree service, whatever the name was, and in the city name. And I was afraid I was going to lose, so I was real cautious about it. I would do one at a time over the course of several weeks and, to see if I got any suspended. And fortunately they weren't, but that was a very minor change, right? Because all I did was add the city name to an existing brand name. To go in and completely change the name of a GMB, I would be really cautious to do that. You might want to try it on one. And if you get lucky and it doesn't get suspended, then you could start to very slowly, cautiously doing it to your others. But, if you lose one, then I would recommend stopping immediately and don't try it again, because there's a very likely chance that it could get suspended for a significant brand name change. Right. But you never know without trying, but I would just caution against that because you could start to lose your assets. Follow the GMB process and, you should be able to get results. And then also the content mirroring process that I'm talking about, we're sharing next weekend, guys. That's a great SEO strategy. And it can actually help you in a situation like this as well. Just to clarify, my main keyword I'm trying to rank for GMB is also my brand name. Yeah, I get that. I understand that.